Welcome to the very first episode of Hustle to Holdings, the podcast where we break down how real estate investors go from hustle to long-term holdings. Today's episode is very special for me, not only because it's my first one, but my guest is not only a successful hotel investor and young entrepreneur like myself, but he is my personal mentor when it comes to hotel investing. He's built and acquired hotels, scaled into the hospitality space at a very young age, and is now navigating entrepreneurship while stepping into fatherhood. So in this episode, we're gonna go deep into how he got started, why he chose hotels, the risks he took early on, and the mistakes people don't see, and how his mindset has evolved as both an investor and a new father. So if you're interested in real estate, hospitality, or building something meaningful that lasts, this conversation is for you. Gideon, welcome to Hustle to Holdings.
Hamie, thanks for having me. I'm pumped.
Yes, I'm so excited to share your story. It's very inspiring. I know it was very inspiring for me, which is why I asked you to become my mentor when diving into the hospitality space. So let's just go a little bit back. What were you doing before hotel investing?
Yeah, before hotel investing, I was in the tech space. So I was a product manager for a tech agency that built tech products for everyone from startups to enterprises. And what I would do is I would work with these companies to develop their go-to-market strategy. So basically, they would have an idea, they would pay us a lot of money to work on the strategy to help them build it. What target demographic are we going for? Where's the gap in the market? And then we would help build the product and launch it. And what segued into real estate for me was my wife and I were both from San Antonio, but we didn't live there at the time. And so we wanted to buy a property that we could stay at when we were in town for the holidays. And with my tech background, I'm constantly thinking of economies of scale. And so I said, okay, if we're going to buy something, let's get as many doors under one roof as possible. So we bought a fourplex in a phenomenal part of town, and we converted each unit into a short-term rental and basically operated it like a small boutique hotel. And with this property, it was ripping cash. The model made sense. We automated 95% of the business. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I said, okay, I want to scale up into commercial real estate and do this a lot bigger, which also ties into my wife was really sick at the time. And so there was also an incentive for me and how I actually thought about my strategy for scaling into commercial real estate. But we can dive more into that a bit later.
Yeah, actually, that was my next question. So I can tell short-term rentals, great strategy, much higher cash flow than long-term rentals, as I know from other investors as well. So that's definitely why I wanted to switch into short-term rentals. But let's talk about the management of it. I know the management aspect when it comes to short-term rentals, you have to be very involved. Who managed your property, their first property at the time?
So the first property, it was my wife. Yeah, okay. So she managed it. I mean, she and I developed the systems together, but she ended up managing the day-to-day.
And how are the systems that you developed for cleaners, for if there needs to be repairs on the property? How did that look like?
So we automated virtually everything. So Guesty was the platform that you can think of as the hub. So that's the property management system. And from Guesty, we have multiple systems that integrate with Guesty to automate the experience. So we have Guesty at the hub. Connected to that, we have a platform called Turno, or Turnover BNB, which automatically schedules the cleaners. We also have an integration with a platform called Price Labs, which automates our dynamic pricing. So it's more expensive on weekends versus weekdays, more expensive during busy season versus slow season, etc. And through that, and then we also integrated it with a platform called Schlag, which is our locks. So basically, the full experience is somebody books a room, it automatically schedules them into the system, so it blocks off the dates. It automatically schedules when their locks work or don't work, automatically messages them, their check-in information, everything else, automatically schedules the cleaners and sets the cleaners' locks to work versus not work, because to reduce the risk of a cleaner walking in on a room that they shouldn't, we just make it so their locks don't even work when the guests are checked in. So it automatically schedules the cleaners, and then of course the pricing is automated as well. So we integrated the system where the end-to-end experience of the average guest, we don't even need to interact with. Everything is automated. The only time we interact with a guest is if either something goes wrong or if they have a question like, hey, do you recommend any restaurants in the area? Then we'll respond there. But even then, we've developed it to the point where we have the list of questions and answers. So even that is mostly automated now.
That is awesome. Just that little snippet is straight gold. I've never heard of, I guess, an investor automating the system. No wonder your tech background did so well when it came to Airbnb investing. And do you use that system for hotels now?
We do. So with hotels, it's more important to be really dialed with your revenue management. So we do pay much closer attention in terms of what the price should be and what competitors are charging, etc. But for the most part, yeah, we have a lot of those systems automated.
That's awesome. So how did you decide to transition from the Airbnb model to a hotel model?
That's a good question. So I started with the goal in mind. So a lot of issues that most entrepreneurs have is they look at the resources that they have and then they decide what to do with it. So they say, I have 50 grand in the bank. I have 4 long-term, maybe short-term rentals. What can I do with this to scale up? That's the wrong way of thinking of it. The right way of thinking of it is, where do I want to be in 1 year and 3 years? And then what do I need to get there? So for me, I had this property. I knew it was doing well. I knew the model made sense. And I started with the end in mind because I had a mentor who told me, don't tell me what you have and what you're going to do with it. Tell me where you want to go and what you need to get there. And that changed everything for me. I went from looking at my small portfolio to looking at hotels and saying, what do I need to get to hotels? That happened in combination with some pretty radical life events that happened. So my wife got really sick. Her health continued to decline, and we had no idea what was going on. It started with brain fog, and then it got to the point where she had really bad migraines. And so we took her to the doctor, and they did a bunch of different tests, and everything came back negative. They had no idea what was wrong. Like it turned out, based on their tests, that they couldn't find anything. And her health continued to decline to the point where she was completely bedridden. She had a hard time stringing sentences together. And it was a really difficult time, to say the least. Like, I spent, just to get vulnerable, a lot of long walks with a cup of tea, just thinking and talking to God, saying, this is, like, we've done everything. Like, we took her probably to 9, 10 doctors by the end of it. We tried everything. Nobody knew what was going on. And at the rate she was declining, had to accept that this could turn out really poorly. Within that same 4-month period, my mom was diagnosed with a form of cancer that only had a 20% survival rate, and my dad was rushed to the ER with heart failure, and they said either he gets a heart transplant or he dies. So he was stuck in the hospital. All this was during COVID as well, so I couldn't visit my mom. I couldn't visit my dad. My wife and I were in quarantine when everything was popping off. She was bedridden, so what shifted for me was a couple things. Number one was I saw boutique hotels not only as an opportunity to grow wealth, but as an opportunity to save my family. Because I knew if anything happened to me, my wife's quality of living would plummet. She wasn't able to work, obviously. And so I saw it more as an opportunity with a survival mechanism where, I mean, when the 3 most important people in your life are hit with something that they could pass away at any moment, it makes you realize how finite life is. Like, we all think, okay, the average life expectancy is whatever, 83 years old, whatever it is, but none of those years are guaranteed. And we could all go at any moment. Like, there's that cliche, tomorrow's not promised, but it seriously is not promised. Like, anything can happen. And so I realized I can't afford to just buy real estate. I need to build a company that buys real estate. So if anything happens to me, I have a team in place that will continue to run these assets, will continue to drive up the value of these assets so that my wife is taken care of even if I get hit by a bus tomorrow. So I had my target of boutique hotels, and I had a fire lit up under my ass where I had to go as quickly as possible. So with that, joined a community, saturated myself with people who they were doing the thing that I wanted to do. Their reality was my dream. and they normalized buying hotels. To them, buying a hotel was the same as going to the grocery store to buy a banana. Like it was nothing. And getting familiar with that mindset and how I thought about things and shifting my perspective, it changed everything for me. And 9 months later, owned a hotel. Now have invested across 8 others, and we have one more in the pipeline that we're closing hopefully within the next couple months. So it's just been full steam ahead. But it all comes down to just that shifting of perspective and having a deep drive to get there.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. So first and foremost, how is your family?
They're good. Thanks for asking. Thanks for
And you
asking.
had a baby, so that's just a blessing in itself. So
Oh,
congratulations for
such a
that.
blessing. Yeah, like if you look at the odds, it's pretty wild. It turned out that with my wife, it was a nervous system issue, which is why it didn't show up on any blood work. So we got that corrected. My dad got his heart transplant at literally like a 5% chance of getting it, and he got it. And my mom made it out. Okay. So literally everybody made it out. It's
I
pretty
love
wild.
to
The
hear
odds were not
that.
in our favor, but yeah, God was good.
Yeah, God was good. Honestly, I've had a situation with my mom that she passed away, but that also lit a fire under me because like what you said, tomorrow is not promised, so you need to think big and you need to think in terms of protecting your family, which is why I also decided to move into larger assets. And I think that's the best way. You have to use these properties to build a business. The property has to be a business for you. So I love the way that you're thinking, and hopefully whoever's listening to this can kind of open their eyes and think, you know what, maybe I should move on to bigger assets and create a business out of what I'm investing in. So love your story. Very inspirational, and congratulations on your family, on your success. I hope that hotel closes soon.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
no problem. So walk me through your first hotel deal. So how did it go? How did you get there? Financing, all of the details.
Yeah, so the first deal, we leveraged something called what I call the mentor flywheel, where my partners and I, we had never done it before, and we knew that we needed to create what's called an asymmetric return. So an asymmetric return is anytime you reduce the downside risk and you increase the upside reward. Because if you make enough of those bets, then overall you have a very high probability of increasing in net worth and success and everything else. So step number 1, we knew we needed to get somebody on our team who had done the thing that we were trying to do. Step number 2 was finding a way to get somebody on that team. So what we did was my partners and I, we took over different geographic territories. So 2 of my partners took the West Coast because there's a lot of properties to look at along the California coast. And then I took over Utah and Colorado. And I spent some time in Florida as well, which had some really great markets, as you know, because you're ripping it in Florida right now, looking through deals, and I'm confident you're going to get one soon. And so we took over those territories, and we were just ripping through deals. And we had a few mentors that we were interested in bringing in on deals. So again, with the mentor flywheel, because this is massive leverage, we would find a deal, bring it back to our mentor and say, hey, what do you think about this deal? And he would say, I don't like it because it has a restaurant. We'd say, cool. So we'd add to the list, no restaurants. We'd go out looking for more deals. We'd bring a deal back. We'd say, what do you think about this one? He'd say, oh, I only like deals that have a minimum of an 18% internal rate of return. So we'd say, cool. We'd add minimum 18% internal rate of return. And we continue to go through that cycle. And that does a couple things. Number 1 is it builds rapport with that mentor. So we're showing that mentor we have an incredible work ethic. Number 2 is we were learning how our mentor thought about things because he was sharing with us details of how he looks at deals. We were seeing deals through his eyes, so we were learning at an incredible rate. And number 3, we were showing him that we were trustworthy because we were building this relationship over time. And so we continued through this cycle until finally we found a deal, brought it back to him, and it checked every single one of his boxes. And he said, oh, this deal's great. And we said, cool, you want to partner on it? And he said, yeah, let's do it. So he came in on the deal, and having an expert with that track record on the deal made everything easier. It made lending easier. It made raising capital easier. It made identifying the problems with the deal easier because he was showing us issues that we wouldn't have caught on our own as we were doing the walkthrough and everything else. And during this time, we bought this hotel when interest rates were the highest they had ever been. So we bought it at the most difficult time to buy a hotel. It was the hardest to find deals, and it was the hardest to find financing. So we were going through it literally, like the market is significantly easier today. And with that expert, we had banks chasing us, begging us to give us their money. Because what happens is banks only make money when they're lending it out. So when it's a really difficult environment, they don't want to lend it out because it's high risk, but they still need to lend it out to make money. So when they find somebody who's lower risk, who has a great track record, they will go through hoops to give you that money. So we're able to get a great interest rate there. And now I'll break down how we structured the deal more in detail. We got a great interest rate there at about 9.5%, which is still very high, but that was phenomenal at the time. We also got seller financing. So 30% of the deal was seller financed at 5%. And then we
Nice.
had that for 5 years, and it steps up in interest, but we locked in the first few years at around 5%. And then we also did subject to, where we bought a small portfolio. So we bought a hotel along with a duplex, and that duplex had a 30-year mortgage on it that was 5 years in. So we got subject to, which for anybody who doesn't know, you're basically taking over the mortgage payments for the seller, and that was at 3% for 25 years. So how we structured the deal is really a big part of what made that deal make a lot of sense, because we got really cheap debt during a time when it was really difficult to find any debt at all.
Yeah, traditional bank financing at that time, I'm assuming 2021, 2022, around there, right after
Yeah.
COVID. Yeah,
Yep.
it's not gonna work out. So you got a great creative deal with like
Yeah.
different elements within the creative financing, seller finance, subject to as well. And you got a pretty low interest rate because at that time interest rates were around 13% average.
Yeah, they're
So
high.
9% is really great. So that's amazing. So how much capital did you put in yourself, and did you have to raise any capital?
That's a really good question. Really, really good question, because it highlights the beauty of commercial real estate and raising capital. So for the earnest money, we put in, between my partners and I, about 100 grand for the earnest money, and another probably 20 grand for due diligence. So we put that money in early on as we went through the deal. And then we ended up raising about $3.1 million. So we bought the hotel for about $5.9 million, just under $6 million. And we raised just over $3 million to do the renovations, to close, and to have some buffer for us. Because you always want to have a contingency, a buffer, in case, you find that the plumbing is way worse than you thought, or whatever it is. So that's what we raised, but here's the kicker. This is where it gets exciting, is that when you raise capital in commercial real estate, you as the general partner who found the deal, did the negotiations, raised the capital, got the deal across the finish line, you get what's called an acquisition fee, as you know. An acquisition fee at closing. So at closing, we as the partners got 4% of the purchase price. Generally speaking, you get anywhere from 1 to 5% of the purchase price in the form of an acquisition fee, depending on how big the deal is. The bigger the deal, the smaller the acquisition fee. But overall, that's a fee to the partners just for getting the deal done, before any improvements or anything like that. We as the partners collected $240,000 in acquisition fees at closing. So we took that acquisition fee and we each invested various amounts. So there were 4 of us, so we each got $60,000. So basically we put about 25, 30 grand each to do the earnest money and everything else. And then at closing collected 60 grand each. And also that earnest money got paid out by the deal itself. So basically, overall, we put money in to secure the deal. We got all that money back once we got to closing, and then we got 60 grand on top of that in acquisition fees, and we all invested some of that money back into the deal because we liked the deal, and I believe everybody who's finding a deal and who's a general partner should invest their own money. If you're looking at a deal where the operators aren't willing to put their own money in, you should ask some serious questions. But we love the deal. It was a great deal. So we ended up investing some of our own money, and I think between us, everybody invested different amounts. We invested about $500,000 into that deal. And yeah, so 60 grand at closing, and we put in about 25, 30 grand just to get us there, but we got all that back.
That's amazing. That's how much I've been putting into my single families, duplexes, my small
Yeah.
multis. So to be able to put that amount and get a hotel out of it, definitely worth the investment.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing because I want to say like on average. So we had some investors who, or some of our partners who put in significantly more than others. But even then, like if you get 60 grand and you leave 20 grand of your own money in the deal or 50 grand of your own money in the deal, you can still walk away with the hotel and you get paid to buy the hotel. It's crazy. Like people think, oh, I can't buy a hotel because I don't have enough money. But you don't need to have the money if you have the deal. If you have the right deal, you can find the money or the partners who can find the money. You don't need to have access to everything yourself.
That's amazing. I love that. It's commercial real estate. I'm seeing it's a very much a team sport rather than residential. So it's great to have the backup of partners when investing in these types of assets. So what was the biggest risk that you took early on for these deals?
The biggest risk that I took early, are you talking about like what's risky about the deal itself or just risky
In
about getting into
general,
the space?
about getting into the space. Yes. Is
I would say the riskiest thing about getting into the space, which now looking back was one of the lowest risk things I had done, but at the time everybody said I was out of my freaking mind, was investing in a mastermind. I spent 25 grand off of a 15-minute conversation. I spent 25 grand and the people in my life who love me and care about me were like, "Gid, are you sure? Like this doesn't make sense." And I didn't have 25 grand at the time because we had sunk all of our money into the fourplex renovating it. It's a 100-year-old property. So I had a lot of work to do. So we bought this fourplex, we sunk everything into it. It was 25 grand that I didn't have at the time, but my gut told me this is the right move. And I'm a firm believer, money loves speed. So the quicker you can make a decision, the quicker you can move, the better. And one of the best ways to move quickly is to listen to your gut and intuition, because I'm a firm believer, like sometimes your gut knows things that your logic doesn't know. And on a 15-minute conversation, I knew joining this mastermind was the move. I didn't know anybody who even worked in the hotel space, let alone owned a hotel. But I knew this is the move to make. Spent 25 grand, got into rooms where people were buying hotels the same way they would go buy a banana at the grocery store, like I said before. And that shifted my perspective, gave me the connections to go out and buy the hotel. So I would say that was the biggest risk that I took early on that looked like I was out of my freaking mind. And now looking back on it, it was a no-brainer decision.
Nice. No, even in your mastermind that I'm at now, it's a great decision. I've learned so much. I've actually gone to networking events with other hotel investors, knowing what I'm talking about when it comes to
Yeah.
actually evaluating hotels. And it's great. You know, you need to pay for your education if you want to get into larger scale projects. So I completely agree. A mastermind is definitely worth it if you want to educate yourself and
Yeah.
get into bigger deals.
100%. As long as it's the right mastermind. There are some
Right.
that, unfortunately, they prioritize growth over quality, which is something we've been really thoughtful of. So they're not all created equal. That's for sure. But even then, like Amy, you're killing it. I'll just give you a quick shout out right now. You are killing it in one of the most action oriented, speed to execution people that we have in the group, and that's why I have zero doubts that you're going to succeed incredibly quickly. Like we're really thoughtful about, like I said, quality. So
Yeah.
we have about a 25% acceptance rate into the community, and I view this more as almost like a coach that's selecting people so they have the best team possible. And you are an absolute rock star with how quickly you take information and turn it into action. So I'm super pumped to see what you do in 2026.
Yes, I'm excited. I should get my hotel already by 2026, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm speaking to the right people and I'm just putting everything together and, trying to network as much as I can so I can be able to close on a deal here in Florida.
Yeah, no, I have no doubts you'll be able to.
So, what would you do differently now than you would do before? So, is like now that you've had your hotels, you're about to close on a new one, is there anything you would do differently?
So I wouldn't change any steps that I did, but I would move faster through all of those steps. So, like I mentioned, money loves speed and wealth loves time. So the quicker you can make a decision, the quicker you will move. And the reason why speed is so important is because if you make a mistake, if you are optimizing for speed, then you can quickly correct that mistake. If you are obsessed with perfection, then you can't afford to make any mistakes, because if you do, you're not going to move quickly enough to correct it. So if you're looking at a deal and you're analyzing it, being precise is really, really important. It's better to lose a good deal than it is to buy a bad deal. So you really need to make sure that it's a good deal. But that said, you also need to move quickly to make decisions on if it's a good deal or not, because the good deals don't last. It's like a plane taking off. It doesn't matter how long your runway is. If you never move quickly enough, you'll never take off. So for me, now to break it down to what I would do differently, I would have moved quicker in a couple areas. Number one is I would have moved quicker on sending out LOIs faster, sooner. So it took me about 3 months before it really clicked for me that rapidly sending out LOIs and having quick conversations with brokers was the key. Like, I was sending out about 5 LOIs per week. I was just ripping them out and analyzing deals like they were going out of style, moving quickly, because the good deals, again, they don't last. People who are in the space, it's like you're familiar with the long-term rentals. Once you know your market, you know your deals, you can do quick napkin math to tell if it's a good deal or not. So I was competing with experts who could tell within 5 minutes if it was a good deal or not. I needed to have a competitive advantage, and for me, that was sheer volume, getting it out quickly. That's the first thing I would have done sooner. From day one, I would have started ripping out LOIs 5 a week. The second thing that I would do differently is I would have started posting on social media much sooner. So I started sharing on social media my journey about 4 months into looking for a boutique hotel, and that changed everything for me. When we raised capital for the deal, there was somebody who was an investor who I was on a 5-minute phone call with them. 5 minutes in, I was explaining to them the deal, why it was good, what our strategy was, and he cut me off and he said, "Oh, no, dude, I know what you guys are doing and what your strategy is. I've been following you for a while. I'm down to invest 50 grand. And literally 5 minutes into the conversation, raised 50 grand, and that's when it really clicked for me. This person was not engaging with any of my content. Like, I didn't even know that they were following me, and 5 minutes in, they invested 50 grand. It's like 95% of people on social media, what they're called is lurkers. Yeah, they're lurkers. So they look at content, but they don't like it, they don't share it, they don't comment, they don't do anything. But people are watching. Even if you're posting and you're only getting 5 likes or 6 likes, there are 9 times as many people who are watching your content and taking it in and just not engaging. And so because I was getting the reps and telling the story, it planted the seeds for this individual where within 5 minutes, he was ready to invest. And that's only one example of a million different things that I've experienced when it comes to social media, of the massive leverage of getting your story out there. Which is why I'm so pumped about you sharing content and the podcast, because we don't spend a ton of time talking about that in the community. We spend some time, and we're going to start spending more time since there's a strong interest and there's such high leverage. But man, you can go so far by speaking through a megaphone, which is content and social media.
Right. No, that's very true. I have gotten, now that I've posted more on LinkedIn, I've gotten a lot more interest. And one of the things that, incited me to start this podcast is, investors listen to podcasts. I listen to podcasts. Podcast is education. So at the end of the day, as I'm talking to these investors, I would love to share these conversations, as I am with you, to other people who are interested in learning, who want to grow. And that's how I started my real estate journey, through podcasts. So I definitely, you've inspired me to even start this podcast, which is why I also wanted you to be the first guest on the show. So going back to the deal, so tell me about the deal that you're most proud of and why.
Ooh, the deal I'm most proud of. I would say the fourplex, simply because it got me in the game. Like, there's the law of the first deal, which is the first deal is what breaks you into the game. One of my favorite stories is of a jiu-jitsu instructor who's talking to somebody who was a white belt. And the white belt was saying, "Man, I'm frustrated, I'm bummed. I really wish that I was getting better and getting up to the blue belt, which is the next above white belt." And the instructor said, "You're already light years ahead of everybody else, because the white belt is the hardest belt to get. It's not the black belt, it's the white belt, because the white belt is that first step into the game. It's the first step into the arena. And it's the person who's willing to take that first step into the arena that ultimately wins. So while the hotels will make me more money and build me more momentum and are what my brand is built around, it's really that first deal that got me in the game. And people get too distracted about results. Like even posting on social media, they'll post and say, they'll look at the likes or the shares and get bummed about it. But none of that stuff matters in the beginning. The only thing that matters, there's only one criteria for success when it comes to starting, and that's starting. Just getting the post out today, tomorrow, every single day. If you're interested in real estate, just buying that first deal. Make sure it's not a dud because you don't want to lose your shirt. But just getting the close on that first deal is what sets the momentum. So that's what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of stepping into the arena, and playing the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Execution is the most important thing. The first real estate deal that I got into, I was 20 years old, had no idea what I was doing, just kind of bought it, and from there it turned into 7 units. So I'm gonna do the same thing with the hotel this time.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm learning more, but I'm just gonna buy it and see where it goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is a big reason why you're gonna win, Amy, and smoke 99% of people is because you're quick to take action without having everything figured out. Like you didn't say, oh, before I buy a hotel, I need 5 short-term rentals so I can figure it out, and then I'll scale up into hotels. You just fucking looked at the hotel and said, I'm going to buy a hotel. And you started making moves directly for the thing that you wanted, as opposed to creating a lie for yourself, which is what most people do. They lie to themselves and say, oh, I need to take these other steps first. But really, they're only taking those steps out of fear for going the thing that they know they should be going for.
Right. And for me, hotels just made much more sense. Short-term rentals was my next move, just because the higher cash flow. But then you're seeing all of these restrictions on short-term rentals in states, for instance, and might as well have more units in a larger building and then still like have the same model. So it just makes more sense for me to shift onto the next big thing rather than have smaller, short-term rental assets. I just might as well just buy a hotel at that point, and that's my short-term rental. That's kind of the
100%.
way that I saw it. But now that you're a new father, I want to ask you, how has fatherhood changed how you think about legacy and kind of how you think about your next steps moving forward when it comes to your future?
That's a really good question. I am so pumped about being a dad because it stretched my thinking. And I'll keep this focused on business, even though there's a lot of personal sentiment around it, of course, is when it comes to building businesses, we make it harder on ourselves to get to our goals because of self-limiting beliefs. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Is when I had the fourplex and I had a sick wife and I had sick parents and I realized I needed to move quickly, it forced me to say, how do I get a hotel as quickly as possible? And so it was a forcing function. If I had time and I felt like I could spend 5 years building up to a hotel, I would have spent 5 years building up to a hotel. But I didn't have that time. It was a forcing function to say, I need a hotel by the end of the year. And it stretched my thinking, and that shift in perspective is why I got a hotel 9 months later. The same thing applies to being a dad. I have less time now because I want to spend time with my daughter and my wife and really soak in these years and experience. But I'm not going to compromise on my goals. If anything, I want to go bigger because I want to build something more significant, because now I have a personal attachment to the next generation. I don't just want to do right by the next generation because I'm a good human and we should all do right by each other. But I have a personal interest in the next generation to make sure my daughter grows up in a world that I want to be a healthy, functional society. And I'm thinking about my contribution. So I want to go bigger. But I have less time to do it. So it's stretching my thinking again to say, how do I go bigger, but do it with less time, do it more effectively? Because billionaires, millionaires, and people with $20 in their bank account, they all have the same amount of time in the day. The only difference is the billionaires thought about that time differently and they approached their goals differently. And having an amazing little girl is a forcing function for me to say, how do I think about this game differently? How do I build something bigger on less time? And it's already stretched my thinking again, and I'm so pumped about it because it can be difficult to stretch your thinking without a forcing function that makes you do it.
Right. Right. Tell me about your next goals then. Tell me about what the mission is now moving forward for 2026, new year. What is your goal?
So my next goal is to align, like I have pillars in life that I live by. The next goal is to thread the needle where I'm delivering on all of those pillars in a single action, a single direction, because to succeed, you need to cut out the noise. You can't do 50,000 different things. You can do anything, but you can't do everything. So for me, that anything that I'm doing, it needs to thread the needle across a few different pillars. And I want to do it big and I want to do it fast. So what that looks like is living a righteous life. To me, that is doing right by others, doing right by God, and doing right by all creation. So living in right relationships with each other and building value that way. I'm not one to win by cutting out the ankles of other people, and I don't think we need to win that way. So what that looks like in a practical sense with that hotel that we bought last year is we created value out of thin air through right relationships. We brought a mentor on. One of my partners is a wizard in finance. The other is a genius in renovations. And through those relationships, we created instant value out of thin air by delivering value on this hotel. So everybody won because of the right relationships that were formed. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar is prioritizing time with my family and my little girl, letting that be a forcing function. At 6 o'clock every day, it's bath time and bedtime. And I give her the first bottle in the morning and I give her the last bottle at night. And I really soak in those moments. And letting that be a non-negotiable, like that time is sacred for me. Like I'm done with work, which has never been something I did. I've always been one of those like work until my head drops and then wake up and work again. I have a much harder time stopping working than I have starting working. And so that's been a really nice forcing function. That's the second pillar. And the third is to create an unreasonable amount of value for everybody, which is what I'm building through the community that you're a part of, where I want to do deals with people in the community because I want to deliver outrageous value. Like, I want to be the guy that somebody calls and says, hey, I need a connection here. And I say, I got you, and I connect them. Or quickly make a decision on a deal so that people can move as quickly as possible and adding an unreasonable amount of value. And so now we're threading this needle, right? Now I'm helping other people buy deals. Through that, I'm buying more deals myself. And I'm doing it in a more constrained time box because I'm stopping work in the afternoon and I'm starting it at a set time in the morning. So it's forcing me to be more efficient and say, how can I deliver more value to everybody and buy more real estate while protecting even more time? And I see the path. Now it's just a matter of executing and building an infrastructure that scales, but it maintains quality, because I don't want to scale without quality. That's why there's a lot of trash masterminds out there. I'm being very intentional about controlling the rate of scaling so that it's prioritizing quality over everything else.
I love that. I love that. Well, if you want to get into a Florida wellness hotel deal,
I'm in it.
that's what I'm looking for.
I'm in it. Really, I'm in it.
Definitely going into the wellness space with my hotels just because that's just the way that
That's it.
I guess the world is moving as well. And I'm just very much into like health, fitness, all of that thing. So if I can integrate that into a hotel, then in Florida, then I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm in it. Let's do it.
I'm looking for
Yeah, let's do it.
So, tell me about your morning routine. Do you have a morning routine specifically? I feel like the morning always sets like the day for you. At least for me as well.
Yeah, my morning routine is a little crazy right now because I spend it with my little girl. So she's 3 months old, so her sleep schedule is still crazy. So I'll usually, my wife will cover the shift from 10 o'clock at night to 4 in the morning. Then I'll cover 4 in the morning to 10 in the morning. So it's a little crazy, but it's generally comprised of getting to hang out with her, playing with her. We'll go on a morning walk and just like pretty much hang out until about 10 o'clock, 10:30. And then my wife takes over. And then I'll usually have a protein shake. I keep breakfast really light. Depending on the morning, I'll also fit a run in. Sometimes I like fitting a run in the middle of the day just to like refuel the creative juices and get them flowing. But yeah, that's typically it. Mornings just hanging out with my little girl, getting a nice, lean, healthy breakfast in, getting some coffee in, and then, yeah, hitting the day.
And then do you have a book that you recommend?
Oh, man. I have so many books to recommend.
That you're reading now that you may like?
Yeah, so it depends on what people are going for. I would say if they're trying to get into commercial real estate, this is not a hotel book, but there's a lot of principles that can be used in it, is Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate. So that book's really good because it talks about how smaller investors can swing above their weight class. So if you don't have a lot of capital or resources, what markets do you go for? What types of deals do you go for? How do you negotiate those deals? And that has been a massive influence in terms of how I structure my portfolio and think about markets. Another good book is Crushing, what is it? Long-Term Wealth, Short-Term Rentals, I think, something like that, from Avery Carl. So that book is for short-term rentals specifically, but there are a lot of really good nuggets in terms of how to think about markets that they appreciate or they generate more revenue when the market goes down. So we bought in a secondary market. That's a big strategy, as you know, in our community. We bought in a secondary market where travel went down over the last couple of years because of the economic struggles, but that market actually went up in travel spend. So we were sleeping like babies while the rest of the market, the rest of the travel market was freaking out. That's another good one. Super fundamental one that I believe every single human on the planet who's trying to do something significant should read is Atomic Habits, because that goes into the small behaviors that will enable you to do incredible things. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing different between you, me, somebody who has no money in the bank versus somebody who has $1 billion in the bank. It all comes down to perspective and behaviors. And if you can lock in the behaviors that the winners do, like don't just try to win, embody the version of you that can get those things, and you embody that version through behaviors and habits. So if you can dial in those habits and be consistent with them, then you winning is inevitable.
Yep, that's why I asked you your morning routine. I'm gonna ask every guest that to see.
Yeah, I like
see
that.
if
That's
I can
good.
copy some habits. And there are so many new parents as well who also, they say that they don't have time because they want to spend it with their kids. So the way that you're doing it, it's working effectively. So hopefully, someone gets inspired and copies your morning routine. So the last thing, so what is the final advice that you have for someone on the hustle to holdings journey?
Take action. Just move. Just go for it. Don't overthink it. Speed over precision every single day of the week. Money loves speed. Wealth loves time. So the quicker you can buy an asset to give yourself more time, the better.
Love it, love it. You're so good at podcasting already. So where can people connect with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram mostly, but I'm across all platforms at Gideon Spencer _. So that's GIDEON SPE. Did I just forget how to spell my name? GIDEON SPENCER _.
Either way, I'm going to put it down on the show notes in case you want to follow Gideon Spencer, look at his journey as well. And, follow our Florida Wellness Boutique Hotel that we're going to be investing in the next
Hell yeah,
year.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you so much for your time, Gideon.
Hell yeah, thanks for having me.